Okay, this is part two of our snowman painting, and I have my tracer. I painted him white just because, look how cute that is. See, that's what we're doing. So you can actually trace this with paint instead of having to use a pencil if you want. It's completely up to you. Um, I am going to use a white paint because it's going to show up best here. It may not show up here, but I can swap out when I need to. So I'm just going to hold it flat, and you can either like just paint along the edge, or you can just kind of do part of it. You don't really have to do all of it, because then when you do your brush strokes, you can like finish out the actual form. Because, you know, we all have an idea that we're making three circles on top of each other. So, but if you like it more filled in, you can do that too. So I'll show you. So I lift it, and you'll see how I've got one side a lot more filled in than the other, and that's fine. So I still have that small brush, but you can go ahead and grab your larger brush and just go ahead and start filling in to complete the shape. And then down here, okay, now I'm also going to go ahead and show you I'm using the lightest color to go ahead and do your shadow right there. Now I'm actually going to end up having to paint over mine here in a minute because I can still see some of my line. Oh wait, maybe not. When I use my pencil, I can still see some of my lines. Okay. So with shadows, shadows are straight. If it's on a flat ground, your shadow is going to be horizontal. Okay, it doesn't curve with the object. So okay. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and change my brush back to my larger. You can either use your larger flat or this one right here that's got more of a little round edge. And only when this paint is completely dry will you be able to paint the white. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint the curve. This is what I meant by going ahead and filling in instead of trying to do that little outline, because your hands will probably shake trying to do the little outline. So if you go ahead and take your brush and just kind of push it down, you can just continue a wide paintbrush stroke. Okay, so you might notice that my brush strokes did curve. I went from the top of each section and I curved around, kind of like, you know, painting a pumpkin. But this just helps create the form of the snowman. And your white will also layer just slightly different, showing a slightly different color. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let this dry. There's going to be a few more changes to this because we will be adding, you know, a face, obviously, but also some shadow to the side of this and the facial features. Now, I'm noticing right here, if you are unhappy with a section, you can always just wipe off your brush. I didn't get it wet because I don't want it real wet. But I didn't really like the shape of that, so I'm going back in with some brown. And just a little bit, because you don't want to just start repainting everything. So I pretty much just put paint where I was making a change. And I am going to keep on painting, and then at the very end, if it's real noticeable, then I can go back in. Well, see, I already started going back in, so that's, you can see what I mean by you'll just end up painting over and over and over again. And you don't really want to do that, so, okay. So pretend it's not there. Finish out your painting, and then you can see if you can still notice it or not, because chances are you won't. Okay, so now is the time to use some of your green. So this is kind of a mid-tone green. You may have, again, slightly different colors will show on the camera as they do in real life. I am going to be, I'm using just that flat brush again. I want you to notice how when I get paint, I dip and lift at this point. I just want that tip. I don't want the whole brush covered like we did with the brown. I like to start from the top, because when you start down here, you're more apt to make these too small and make these too big. And these are going to be smaller than those. So I'm coming up here, and, you know, we're going to be layering these. So right now you are just putting the first, I'm just kind of just almost just stamping it on there. Now you can flick it. So right now it doesn't even matter if the brush strokes are full of paint or not. I'm just getting the beginnings. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and get some more. And it's okay to vary. Notice how I left more branch showing right there. You know, as the branches get longer, the green part gets farther away from the trunk. Also, these are getting pretty big, so you can now start kind of seeing the shape, how the branch itself comes in. I just noticed I didn't really have a very definite center. Now this one, you can see my swoop is pretty swoopy, and, you know, I can just cover that up. We know the branch isn't going to be that thick. Okay. And this one's kind of, I'm kind of making it leaning down, just a little bit. I just had a little bit more green paint on my brush, so I'm just going back over some kind of lighter areas. Okay, now I'm going to let that dry before I add any more to it. And I'm going to look down here because I'm wanting one of mine to branch out a bit and reach that snowman body. See how the white is still drying, so that's fine. I'll come back to it, and I can even bring this one in a little closer. I don't want it off balance, so I'm going to make some of these a little longer. Oh yeah. Okay, I believe okay, I'm going to stop now, because you'll be able to continue this with, you can take a lighter color. So a couple of ways you can do that. You can take from the side here on your tan. Now I may end up with some white in there too, and that's fine. It's going to pretty much give you a grayish green. Okay, so this time though I'm going to change brushes, because it'll be easier to flick. See, so this is a really small brush. Let me come up here to where it's a little drier. See, because these are much smaller brush strokes. You know, it's just a little. Now, if your arm or hand shakes, you can always anchor your elbows, take one hand and, you know, kind of push against your wrist. That way you can steady that hand. Sometimes it happens, and artists use a bar that goes, it's raised and it's wider than the painting, and it sets across, and then you can lay your arm on it. So sometimes it's literally just muscle fatigue if you've been painting a long time, and then other times it's, you know, you had too many cups of coffee. Okay. So you can continue to do this until you are satisfied with the lighter colors, or you can go ahead and mix a darker brown. I'm using a darker green. I'm just using the green with that brown. Now, the thing about it is, an artist likes or needs to use the colors within their palette in order to make their shadows and their highlights. That's how you're able to get the right tone. So now I've got dark, and anytime we have a shadow, that means there's a light source. So when we look at our snowman, let me pull this up just a little bit. We have the light sources coming this direction because the shadow is on this side. So that means this side will be brighter, this side will be darker. So I'm going to go through, and this is where I can do some some darker branches. But I don't have to go crazy with it, you know, just a little bit. And then I'm going to go even lighter over here to get some highlights. Now this may not really be on your picture, but this is just something I've added. Okay, now if you don't see how my brush strokes are kind of blobby? If you don't like that, you can always come back with your regular green and just kind of clean it up. Like if it's too thick, or if it's not long enough, if it just doesn't look like a branch. So I'm using my pinky. You can't really see that. I just realized that. I'm so sorry. I'm using my pinky to support my hand. See how this one looks like I've lost my shape. So I'm just going to paint my shape back. Okay. Alright. Now, so that is our tree. We have just a little bit more to do on the ground around the tree. We want to show, maybe some, just think of it as like dried pine needles or pine cones. And then a little bit of black. Because our tree trunk needs to have a little bit more, and I'm just doing, it's okay for these to be thick, thin, jaggedy, Let me try to fix my camera. Because it's bark, we're trying to show texture. Okay, you can go into the branches if you want a little bit. Or a lot. I did just a little bit too much right there, so I'm going to go back over that. Okay, that just gave me some bark. Okay, take a tiny, I didn't even clean my brush. I just dipped and lifted and got that white. This is super white. Just a little bit. Dip and lift again into the white. You're doing just a little bit. Okay, that just adds a little more highlight. Okay, when we come back, we will finish up the details on the tree and our snowman.